All right, so this is the results video for lab number 1 for my statistics class. So everyone has gone through, hopefully everyone has gone through and entered their data for lab number 1. And the next step is going to be to conduct our analyses. Now, but to conduct our analyses, first we need to combine our questions into single variables to represent forgiveness of others, forgiveness of self, and emotional empathy. Questions number 1, 2, 3, and 4 correspond to forgiveness of others. Questions number 5, 6, 7, and 8 correspond to forgiveness of self. And questions 9, 10, 11, and 12 correspond to emotional empathy. However, some of these questions are reverse coded. So for example, if you look at question number 10, I am able to make decisions without being influenced by other people's feelings. So high numbers on this would indicate low empathy, but low numbers would indicate high empathy. What we want to do is we want to reverse code these backwards worded items so that high numbers always mean the same thing. So we would change this coding so that instead of 1 being disagree, we'll make we'll turn that 1 into a 5, we'll turn that 2 into a 4, and the 3 will stay a 3. And then we'll just flip that scale. We're going to do this for questions 1, questions 2, questions 5, 6, 8, and 10. All of these are reverse-coded questions. Okay? Once we do that, then we're going to combine questions 1, 2, 3, and 4 together, questions 5, 6, 7, and 8 together, and questions 9, 10, 11, and 12 together. And we'll do that by just taking the average. So this will be people's average score across these variables. Now, there are ways to do this using the drop-down menus here. So we can use recode into different variables here. We can compute a variable here. For the sake of time, I'm going to show you the magical syntax. This is the recode command. So it's basically saying take these variables and flip the code, make a 1 into a 5, make a 2 into a 4, and so on, and then give them new names, question 1R, 2R, 4R. This is the same thing that would be produced if we went through these pull-down menus. This is just a little bit faster. As you'll see in a minute, I'm just going to click go, and all of this is just going to happen. So this is forgiveness of others. This is going to be the average, the mean of question 1, 2, 3, and 4. And notice I'm using the reverse-coded question of 1 and 2 because, right, question 1, it is hard for me to forgive those who have hurt me. We want to flip that so higher numbers mean more forgiveness. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to run this code and Now we have all of our reverse-coded questions here. And now we have 3 variables here that represent the forgiveness of others, forgiveness of self, and emotional empathy. The next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to test our hypothesis, right? We're asking 3 questions, asking about gender differences between these 3 variables. Now, in class, we talked about the different hypotheses that we might have. So you might predict that women are going to be more forgiving of others than men, or vice versa, right? So you might have these 3 hypotheses be similar to what we predicted in class, or you might have your own hypotheses, okay? But you're going to want to make a prediction. What do you think is going to happen? Are women going to be more empathetic compared to men, or vice versa? So you want to have those hypotheses in place before you do your analyses so that we can test those hypotheses. Now, the way that we're going to test them, we need to just quickly remember how we coded gender. So 1 is male and 2 is female. We're going to conduct an independent samples t-test. Now, if you recall from class, an independent samples t-test is the test we use when we have a dichotomous independent variable and a continuous outcome variable, right? And that's what we have here. We have gender, which is our dichotomous independent variable. You can put this in the grouping variable box. And we have to tell SPSS what these group codes are, so 1 and 2. And then we have our continuous outcome variables. In this case, it's forgiveness of others, forgiveness of self, and emotional empathy. And the question that we're asking SPSS to tell us, are men and women different on these 3 variables? So we'll click OK. And we'll get this output. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to export this file into a PDF. That way we can open that PDF and I can zoom in a little bit on these results so you can see them a little bit better. Okay, so here's the output from our t-test. So the first thing we're going to look at is the ends and the means. So we've got 23 men and 28 women. And their forgiveness of others, their average was 3.26 for males, 3.25 for females. So that's not much of a difference, right? This is the standard deviation here. Forgiveness of self for males, 3.06, females, 3.34. So females did score higher than males. Now, whether or not that's significant, we're not sure yet. We're going to look at that next. Emotional empathy, females scored 3.32, males scored 2.88. So again, females are scoring higher compared to males, but we're not sure if that's significant until we look at our t-test. So when we scroll down, for this Levene's test of equality of variances, you can basically just completely ignore this box. What we're most interested in is this first line, equal variance is assumed for each of our three variables. So the t here is 0.007, degrees of freedom 49. 0.994, is that significant? And then I pause here for you to think about whether or not that's significant. Forgiveness of self, negative 1.73, degrees of freedom 49. 0.088, is that significant? Lastly, emotional empathy, equal variance is assumed, negative 2.088, p is equal to 0.042. Is that significant? Okay. So what you need to do is go ahead and figure out whether these are significant differences, and then see what that means in terms of the hypothesis that you have. If you predicted that women would have more emotional empathy than men, women did in fact score higher, and if that's significant, then you would support your hypothesis. Now, on to the lab write-up. So the lab write-up will be due on the date indicated on Moodle. You will turn in your lab write-up to the Dropbox on Moodle. And I have a video up there that explains how to do that. So here's the lab. This is what you need to do for this lab. First, you need to read and summarize this article. 1 or 2 paragraphs, talk about the purpose, the method. Make sure you talk about the 3 independent samples t-tests they found. Make sure you give their results in plain English. Again, I don't want to know what their numbers are. I want to know your interpretation. I want to know your understanding. Their 3 research hypotheses are not explicitly stated, so you need to come up with what you think their hypotheses might have been. Okay. Then what you're going to do is you're going to state your 3 research hypotheses, and then you're going to write up the results of our 3 t-tests in APA style and discuss them in terms of what happened. So demonstrate to me that you can look at these statistics and then figure out whether or not there's significant differences, and then relate those back to the hypotheses that you have. And finally, for the 3rd section, you want to compare and contrast our results. You want to compare the results of our study to their target article. How are they similar? How are they different? What does this tell you about gender differences in emotional empathy and forgiveness? If something worked, if your hypothesis was supported, it's great. If it wasn't supported, why wasn't it supported? What are some ideas, things you could think about to do next time? Okay. The lab report itself should end up being about 2 or so pages long. Okay. This is worth about 30 points. That's 3 homework assignments. You want to put in 3 homework assignments worth of effort. Now, I don't expect you guys to get this perfect the first time around, but what I will do is I will give you feedback on lab 1, and then hopefully your lab number 2 will incorporate that feedback, and I'll be a little bit stricter with my grading for lab number 2. So that is it for the results for lab number 1 for stats class. Please email me if you have any questions.